In 2013, Edward Snowden leaked a trove of classified documents detailing the extent of the U.S. government's domestic surveillance programs. This leak involved a huge personal sacrifice, as Snowden had to go into exile in Russia, where he still lives to this day. The massive upheaval necessary in order for him to leak these documents begs the question of whether or not it was ethical for the United States government to engage in the domestic surveillance and data collection programs that it did. Snowden risked his freedom and his life, as he thought that it was unethical, and he made great sacrifices in order to bring that information to the public. Documents leaked by Snowden reveal just how much information is collected by the U.S. intelligence agencies, both domestically, with almost 3 billion computer and telephone records collected in a single 30-day period in March 2013, shown here in a leaked screenshot originally reported by The Guardian. 97 billion records were collected internationally during that same time period, originally reported in that same Guardian article. At the same time, intelligence officials were claiming to Congress that they were unable to tell how much data was being collected on U.S. citizens. Those records were collected from several different programs, including one called PRISM, where intelligence agencies copied records directly from the servers of major U.S. service providers. The leaks also revealed abusive practices that were widespread within the intelligence community, jokingly referred to as Love-In. Love-In was a program where intelligence officers would abuse their powers by accessing the private communications of people they were romantically or socially involved with. There were at least 12 documented cases of this type of violation in the decade before the Snowden leaks, none of which were prosecuted by the Department of Justice. The main stakeholder in this case is the American public. The other stakeholders in this case act in reaction to the concerns of the American public. The government and other advocates for their surveillance program believe that they are protecting the safety of the public against future terror attacks. Critics of the government's surveillance programs, such as Snowden, believe that they are protecting the public's right to privacy. Utilitarianism is an ethical philosophy which focuses on the outcomes of a situation rather than applying moral weight to each action. Through the lens of utilitarianism, the question of whether or not this data collection was ethical depends on whether or not it increased or decreased happiness for the greatest number of people. On one side of this equation, you have everybody whose happiness was decreased by the government's data collection program. Some of these harms would be acute, such as the victims of Love-In, who had their data compromised by snooping paramours. Other harms here are diffuse, with most U.S. citizens having some records of their communication intercepted by the government, and the discomfort that might cause them. The violations of individual privacy in this analysis are weighed against the successes of the government at foiling terrorism. According to General Keith Alexander, head of the National Security Agency at the time, these programs, together with other intelligence, have protected the U.S. and our allies from terrorist threats across the globe, to include helping prevent potential terrorist events over 50 times since 9/11. It's difficult to make the determination here about the utility of these programs, since the government can't reveal all of the information that we would need in order to make an assessment of whether or not the benefits of the surveillance programs outweigh the harms. According to social contract theory, the ethics of the government's data collection program depends upon the social convention of these actions. Social contract theory would categorize this as ethical activity, as the majority of the public is comfortable with data being collected by the government on all Americans in order to potentially stop terrorist plots. According to a poll conducted by Pew Research Center in 2019, 49% of Americans are comfortable with the government collecting this information, as opposed to 31% who say that it is unacceptable, 19% undecided. This is seen here contrasted with other possible uses of data collection. This shows how the 9/11 attacks deeply affected America's understanding of their own security and made people much more willing to sacrifice their privacy in order to keep their nation safe. With such a wide margin of support in these collections programs, social contract theory necessitates the creation of these programs. Ultimately, the government's data collection program was warranted. Utilitarian analysis of this question leaves us with a difficult question of whether the benefits of data collection outweigh the harms, although there is some nuance there depending on how we weigh the loss of privacy that occurred against the potential loss of life if the government surveillance programs hadn't been used to stop attacks. Social contract theory provides us with a firmer answer, as the majority of the people support the collection of information by the government to the end of preventing future terror attacks. These surveillance programs need to exist, as the social contract prioritizes anything that prevents another attack like 9/11. They also need to have ironclad protections against abuse and mischief from the employees monitoring them. Snowden's leaks may not have unveiled a surveillance regime that was unethical, but they did spark necessary conversation on the issue and broaden the public's understanding of the surveillance state that was created in the wake of the 9/11 attacks.